And recording is in progress. So set this up. All right, so I'm going to run through some examples one at a time using Python and our good friend, the AWS console. So this one's an easy one. Now I'm going to set this folder up so I can actually keep those files tracked. And I'm going to turn off the sound effects so this doesn't get too annoying. No sounds. So up so that annoying sound doesn't keep happening. So we are still recording. Double check that. Yep. All right. So this one's a basic one, and I need I would talk through this as well. For the security group, I have one. All right, good. I think the last time I showed this was through Cloudshell. So we can still try this with Cloudshell. Actually, it might be a better idea to do this through Cloudshell. So maybe I'll do it in both. So this is the first thing I will show. And that might be a good, yeah, that might be a good, actually, might be a good exercise to see the two languages. So inside and outside of Powershell. So this one's a very simple example, relatively speaking. Two. And actually, yeah, it might be we're doing this. So I'm going to type some simple commands. And yeah, what I could do is switch to Cloudshell to show the same thing. So a little bit more Python. Excuse me. This one is being indented. So we can see two. Two indents. Do a very simple test. Version 3.9.13 of Python. Now to install Bottle 3 again. Let me update model 3. Again. All right. So do a very simple test. This is the other thing I wanted to do. And make sure I can see the security groups in Python. And I can indent this too. All right, excellent. So security groups here. And so if you go to, if you're following along with this, what I just did, let me move this out of the way a little bit. And let me do this. I'm going to go off camera or stop sharing just for a second. Just so I can take something off screen. Yeah, they like to add a lot of information that sometimes you don't need to see, especially if you're doing recordings. So this should be fine. And all right, so this should be fine. So I actually got to make sure I update that screen. Let me start sharing again. The same screen and screen 1. All right. So I had a security group here under EC2, and I wanted to just show how you can look for the same security group here. So I'll explain more about that, but I just want to run through some of these examples so you can kind of map some code to what you can see on screen. All right, so that's one. And like I said, these are very short examples. Short, but they're powerful. That's basically. So that should also be a pretty good one. It's a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to actually run through it. Yeah, this one's very, but it's a good exercise. So let's see if all the other pieces are actually, and if I run into any issues, then we can figure it out. And I call this the wrong thing. I'm switching between languages so often. So that was for PowerShell, which is not what I'm trying to do. All right, that's the proper way of doing it. So let's look at this example here, where we create a key pair. So a key pair is, you know what a key is. So you need a key in order to access resources. It's like a password in your environment in the cloud. So it almost doesn't matter what you're trying to access. It could be storage, it could be an EC2, it could be a database, it could be almost anything. But you need a key specifically to gain access. Otherwise, somebody else can access it, or someone can change it. So there are a few things. You want keys to keep people from accessing things that they should not be accessing, like a password or key in your house or something like that. And you also want to use them, and that's to keep people from accessing it. And also you want to protect the resources, because giving access to it might give people the ability to create resources that actually cost you money. So it's very important to safeguard keys. So there are two ways to do this. I'm going to show this way. So I'm going to create a key pair. All right. So I'm going to create a key pair. So imagine I just created a key. So you went to a locksmith, or you went to a hardware store, or somebody was an expert in hardware. You say, I want to create a key, and I want to use the key in the lock to protect something. So I want to use that key, particularly that key pair. I want to use it to lock one part to lock, and I want to use another part to unlock. So a key pair, because you think of a pair, there's two. There's a part that you use for locking, and there's a part that you use for unlocking. That's why they call it a key pair. The one locking and unlocking. So the most popular one is, I shouldn't say the most popular one, but actually probably maybe the most popular. It's been around for like probably 40 years at this point. RSA. So usually I pick RSA and I don't pick anything else. We take a quick look. You look at the differences. Yeah, they get it very simple. So RSA is pretty much everywhere, but it looks like ED25519 is just used for Linux and Mac machines, which is interesting. It's very interesting. So I'm going to create one at the command line, on the screen. So I'm going to say test key pair. So it's like I'm creating a key and a lock. I call this test key and lock. All right, so now, I can save it. All right, so now I have created a key and a lock. What does that mean? I can use one part of this file to lock something, and I can use another part to unlock something. So what I want to do, I just did that on screen. And we can also, I'm going to try it on with Python, and then I'm also going to show it in Cloudshell, so you can see kind of the three ways of doing this. So the Python one is going to be probably a little bit more complicated. For this key pair wrapper. Okay, so let's do that. So this one, you go through there's a lot of information, but it's not that bad. Actually, it's not that bad at all. So, all right. So I'm going to save this. And I'm actually going to try and use it. All right, so there's a class called keypair wrapper. So typically I don't use classes a lot the way I use Python, but we're going to use it this time. So you're going to learn a little bit about object-oriented programming. Well, not a lot, but just a bit. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to copy some code, make life easy, and just follow along. Don't have to understand everything, but a lot of code is copying stuff over too. So this is something else that you can use at work. So this is going to be probably a little bit. So that we did it this way. I'm going to try it another way. And I'm going to try it a third way. So the important takeaway is sometimes you have no choice but use different ways um, to get to the information that you want. There's just no choice about it. So see if this could I can just do this simply here. Yeah, this is going to be a good exercise. Oops. All right, let's try this one. So it's asking for two things: an EC2 resource here. Actually, let's do it this way. So this one. So I don't want to use it that way. Right, so let's go through, see the documentation. Do this. Static. One second while I look something up. Also do this in Cloudshell while we're at it, so I can do that too. So let me show this in PowerShell, kind of the same thing, and switch back to so this you can try as well, following along in the video. You can see the exact same commands that I'm running. We're just make sure I'm still recording. Yep, still recording. All right, so great, loaded. So I'm going to run this very basic example. All right, so this here. This time I created, so remember I said before the RSA format, and you also saw PEM. So this time I created or the first time I created a key. Let me pull up the name again. I created a key called a testing key in mock. So I'm going to run the command in Cloudshell. I'm just going to change the name though. So I'm going to call this two. All right, so I just created this. And there's a file now. There's a file that contains my keys. So see, and actually there's something else I can show with that. So if we go back here, right now I had one key before, or two keys, now I have three. So you saw me create this one way, you saw me create it another way. And there's something else I want to show. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I do want to show some stuff about keys. So you see how it says key right here, private key. So I want to see if I can show you something else. This might not work, but okay, you can't use this one as a certificate. All right, that's what I thought. So that won't do what I think I wanted to do, but that's okay. So this part right here, there's a private key that you can use to lock things and unlock them. So that's what I wanted to show. So a key, and it shows up everywhere. So if you are using anything that's security related, no matter what it is, at some point you're going to have to use keys, especially in IT. So another way that you use as a key, use your password or use your passpin on your phone to access like your phone or your tablet or whatever. But sometimes you need something a little bit more complicated than a pin, because a pin could be like 5, 6, 7, or 8 characters. Sometimes you want something more. You want something that's longer and that is harder for people to guess. A lot of times people can guess what codes are going to be. They're going to say the code is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a lot of people put their code as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Having to do something like this, like if you take a look at it, there's nothing that you can read here. There's nothing easy to read. And very, very few people, maybe 1 in 100 people, could actually memorize this, especially repeatedly. So what I want to explain about that is that you have a key. You use the key to open things or close things, just like any lock. You use that key to secure your resources. You need to do that so that people can't access your information and sell your information or change your information. And you also need that as a cost measure. So as there are some things that in order for you to use certain services, you need access to the key. If you can't use the key, then you can't access the service. So that's kind of the takeaway of that. So every single EC2, especially on AWS, Azure does it slightly differently, but on AWS lets you use keys to access your information. Azure lets you do username and passwords on certain things. So you have the option of using keys if you want to, but the obligation is that you have to use a username. You have to use a key. So on Linux, you have to use a key. In Windows on AWS, you have to use a key to decrypt. That's what I was talking about before. That's another term, encryption, decryption. You use the key to encrypt a username and password. So you use a lock to lock something else. So that's the other thing that's interesting about how this is set up. You can use a lock to lock something. So if you had a safe, you can lock a safe, and then inside the safe there's a key, and then the key, you have to open up that safe to get access to that key. So you need 2 keys to access what you really want. One that opens the safe, and 2 that actually gets you the key that you want in the first place. So this is the important thing about key pairs. This is the thing to think about with key pairs, is they're used to secure things. And what I want to show is, like in Cloudshell, you can go in and type the same thing in Cloudshell just for fun. Watch exactly what I just did. I did 3 commands, I think. 1, really 2. 1, 2, I'll say 3. And 3. You just focus on those 3 commands. You don't have to understand everything, but just understand, if you do it, that you now know how to create a key, right? So you know how to create a key. Just follow what I said in Cloudshell. The first command is this. You follow it exactly. This didn't matter, so I shouldn't have even put that there. We can ignore that. And then this one, which will actually give you the key pair. So I'll leave that alone for now. And the other thing I wanted to show was, I want to use this example. So you notice the example I just used, it was just basically 1 line. That was it, just 1 line. And in the window, back here, it was pretty simple. I just said create key pair. If I wanted to compare key pair name, so I have a key name here, and then I go RSA. I have where is it? I have RSA here. I have PM format. Usually I use PM as a format for what I'm looking for, but you can use PM or PPK. They're not exactly the same, but you can convert from one to the next. They have the same information, just a different format. So if you notice here, there are only 3 things I have to say. I have to say the name, the type, and then the format, right? So sometimes you have a key that is a metal key. Sometimes you have a key that's a plastic one. I'm just using that as an example. You have different types of keys because you have different types of locks. You have different things that you're trying to access. So the main lesson is that if you're doing anything with security, or anything that you're doing with technology that's serious, you have to be pretty good to in using some of the different tools. Otherwise, someone can control your system, or they can use your system in a way that it's not supposed to be used, and they can also use your system to cost you money. So, you want to have a strong understanding of security, because when people don't, that's when certain problems happen, major problems. So it's just something very important to be aware of. So the other thing I wanted to do, and I'll probably work on that over this, is I'm going to show a little bit more of this example, which is so if you notice, this part right here, 53 lines. I'm going to probably add about 4 more. So let's say it's 60. So let's say 60. So in Python, if you want to do this, and this a little bit, I'm making this more complicated than it has to be. Python, it might take about 60 lines to do this, but in Cloudshell, using Powershell, which I talked about often, we only needed one line. So that just shows you how, depending on what you're trying to do, you might have to use a command and you get everything you need in one line, or you use something else and it might take you 30 lines to do it. So just want to show that. So they just get a drink. All right, so other thing I'm going to show is, I want to work on this example here. So let's see if I can remember. So this is the more complicated one. If you can understand this, then you deserve a prize. You deserve a major prize. So I'm going to see if I can remember how to do this using I can do it that way too. Maybe I want. Let's see. It might be an easy way for me to do what I'm trying to do. Take a look. And this is not a danger, but this is one of the things about technology. There's might be 10, 20, 30, 100 different ways to might be 20 or 30 ways to do something, and you just have to figure out the fastest and the easiest way to actually do it. So let me get a bottle 3 clients for EC2. Let me actually try and make this shorter. So I described this other example, but the example I described before, that might be more than we actually need. So I want to do something simpler. And yeah, this is what I want. So let's make life a little bit easier. So what I said earlier was not strictly accurate. It's actually there's no way of doing it. So the way I was describing earlier is if you're trying to do everything from scratch. So typically you don't want to do that. I'm going to sneeze, so 1 second, please. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to use a simpler example. This is actually what I should have been doing in the first place. So I'm going to do the same thing one more time. I'm going to create another key. Let me go. And we are in, where are we? We are in US East 1. So you heard me talk about that before. We have different regions. This one's in Northern Virginia. So I'm going to do this. Let me index in twice. All right, so I'm going to recap what I talked about earlier because I know a few people just dropped in, so I'm very happy for that. So let me run through the example again, and then this example might be a little bit easier to understand because I'm talking about keys. This might be an easier example to understand. It's very complicated. It's still complicated. It's still important. But yeah. All right. So that's the first thing I want to do. Let me get the other thing. Okay, so it should be this. Here's some audio. If you have a question, please tell me what your question is. Otherwise, I'm going to have to mute it just so I can hear. What's this? Yeah. All right. All right. Let me mute myself and then I'll mute the others. There you go. All right. So all right. So that's what I wanted to show here. Okay, that's one. I'm gonna try something here. That's one. And this is, I expect this to fail, but I expect it to fail in a predictable way. So all right. And let's make it simple. So this key name equals, what I call it? Yeah, let's make this right around. Do that first. And then type, say, and key format equals PEM this time. And where do I want to put it? I think it just kicks it out. All right, so now let's create another key pair. We already have 3. Let's create one more. Oh, this one. Let's number 3. Let's see if I can get this one to work here. So this is going to be the third one. We created 2 before, 2 different ways. On this, and then all right. So did run. So change this to false. And I don't need this line anymore. Actually, yes, I do. Change to false. Okay. And all right, so that's the third one. All right, so I'm going to go through these again. I'm going to actually do it. I'm going to delete all of them because I want to try. I want to run this again, and then yeah, I can delete it. Usually, you want to keep at least one for testing. All right. So remember, create a key pair. I'm going to call it test key pair 1. All right. The name, I have the type. So this technology, RSA, has been around, at least people using it regularly, for like close to 40 years, if not that, 40 years, as just something that people can actually use. And you have ED25519. I've never used it, but a lot of people do. And then the PM format. So you just need 3 things: the name, the type that you want. Typically, you're going to use RSA because it's the most common one. PM is also, I think, more common than PPK. And create a key pair. All right, that's one. The other way that I just showed was using Cloudshell. So Cloudshell, I'll clear the screen. You can just follow along. Like I said, just type it the way I type it. I'm going to create another key. I'm going to create key lock 2. All right, so if I go here, all right, I should have changed the name. I messed up the spelling, but that's okay. So I created that. So that's the second way I've tried to create it. Now the third way is using code on Python, a different language. So let me remove, I'm going to remove everything that you don't need. You don't need this. You don't need this. So basically, that went from 60 lines to about 4. So this is the third one I'm going to create. I'm just going to run this command on my computer. And go here. So right now you have 2, or you have 3 of these, but 2 of them that I created today. This one I created 2 years ago. My goodness. And this is the third one. So, I'm gonna delete this because I actually want to do it again. I want to delete this because I want to create it again because it's something I keep forgetting to show you. All right, so if I do, I'm going to save the key pair. I wasn't saving it before. That's what the problem was. And then so I just print it out. Remember, use print to show information. So all right, so let me actually do this. I'm gonna do this one more time. Because I want to make sure that it's easy to at least kind of get an idea. If you're watching what I'm doing, then you can use the example. But I showed 3 so far of doing the same thing, of creating these key pairs. So you think about a key pair, it's not exactly, but it's like a password. It's like a password, but you can do a lot more things with it, and it's a lot harder for someone to, it's pretty much impossible, realistically, for someone to guess what your key pair is. The person could live a trillion years before, and they still, it's just not practical. So these are pretty secure. Yeah, it is very good secure. So let me get We'll run this again. And this time I'm going to save it. That's what I want to do. Oh, delete that. So I'm going to delete that. Oh, all right, it's almost 11. So I'm going to actually pause. I actually have to step away. I'll be back at 11:10. We start back at 11:10. Any questions, please post in the chat. I'll be back. Any questions, please post in the chat. I'm going to pause the recording as well.